Guys, it's Sadie. Welcome back to the Hear Me Out podcast. This week, I just kind of want to think out loud on here, so hopefully that's okay with you. Just some recurring thoughts I've been having that I haven't necessarily worked out in my brain yet, and I figured this would be a good place to do it, honestly. And on one of those thoughts really is how I feel coming onto social media, the pressure to have a full-fledged thought, just like something fully thought out and any counter arguments, whatever the case may be, thought of. And I feel like that's just, it's not a good thing to have, but I'm wondering if you guys ever feel that way either. It doesn't necessarily have to be social media, but really just like a public forum. For example, I come on here, and sometimes, even though this is a space that I have created largely just for myself out of a hobby, not trying to create a massive following or anything, even though that is where I'm coming from, I still feel the need putting something out in the world to have it be fully analyzed and critical in just how I'm approaching in thought. And so I guess this episode is kind of a counter to that, and it's an active effort to do things on the fly, honestly, and think out loud, essentially. Like, that is what I have in my Instagram bio, basically, where I tag Hear Me Out. I literally say, oh, like, I think out loud on Hear Me Out, and it's the link or the whatever, the @ to the Hear Me Out Instagram. And so I just want to be actually in tune with that, and I want to follow that train of thought. I think it can be not damaging, but discouraging to have people thinking that you can't bounce ideas off of people and that everything you say needs to be incredibly intellectual. I don't necessarily think anything I say is intellectual, but not even here. Also, just in class, a lot of times I think in my head and I won't raise my hand unless I have a full-fledged thought, unless I know exactly how I'm going to word something. I don't know if that's just my brain. I have a feeling that that is other people's too, but maybe that's a certain wiring, whatever the case is. Definitely some hints of anxiety in there, but I don't think there's any issue in parsing out your thoughts in real time. And so that was one of the things that I just kind of wanted to verbalize here and just kind of fight here in a sense. Because honestly, when you don't have a full-fledged thought, like when you're not just thinking in your brain, when you are thinking out loud, things are going to come out in a different way. And I think the process is different. And when the process is different, just things are created different. I don't know. You just come to things very differently when you think it out loud. And you also just kind of inspire others in the process, I think, both in just giving them the courage to think out loud themselves, or just quite literally giving them food for thought, or other things. Like, it's kind of when you see an author or some kind of artist and they talk about the process of an album, for example, and all of a sudden you realize they weren't necessarily a genius overnight. There's certainly some cases, but a lot of things take time. It takes a process. It takes thinking a lot. It takes also bouncing off of other people. Again, the idea of inspiring others, but also just using them as a soundboard. I don't think a lot of great things are created in a vacuum. And that's also another thought that I do want to kind of entertain. That's been a recurring thought of mine. Just debating whether or not the greatest things, or maybe I should say the best potential of any work of ours, like the absolute just peak of it, can be created in a vacuum. I'm tempted to say no. And I don't necessarily want to get too philosophical about it, but it has been a thought on my mind. Just the thought of community, and I'm a very individualist person. I'm quite independent, and although I work well in groups, I'm not necessarily always tempted. Like, that's not my first thing, to jump to a group or to jump to feedback. Could be for a lot of reasons, but I don't exactly know why it is. I definitely can't pinpoint one reason why that is. But then again, with that mentality, it's one of those things where I favor individualism and seeing what I can do on my own, and yet I know I'm gypping myself in the process, because I really do think we're all better with feedback and in community, and it's great to have a version of something that you have made, likely a primary or like primitive version of something. But then I think the next step is in leveling up is to take it to other people. And kind of in the same vein of your first draft of something is never the thing that gets published. At least it rarely should be, in my opinion at least. Writers often say that the writing process doesn't even start until the first draft. And that's something I used to hate very much so. And I would write papers, for example, in school. In one sitting, or if I had to do it in multiple sittings, it would be like from beginning to end. And the second sitting, for example, I would just pick up right where I left off until I finished at the end. And then I would do proofreading from a grammar perspective, but never from a content perspective, never really switching out sentences. I would get so attached to sentences. But recently I've been trying to detach myself from that and to be quite receptive to feedback. It's really hard, especially when you feel like something's your baby. But if you're going to the right people, that's certainly a key here. If you're going to the right people who want what's best for you, like they truly have your best self, I guess, in mind. That's not the wording I'm looking for. I don't know why it's escaping me right now. But if you're seeking people that want what's best for you and also are experts, or at least better than you, I know there's that saying where it's like, well, why would you want advice from someone who is less well versed in something, who has less experience than you? I think that can be a little bit exclusive, but generally the idea of just wanting to elevate yourself, but like you're inevitably going to get better at something if you know you are the worst person in the room. I honestly do love the saying where it's like if you're the smartest person in a room, then you're in the wrong room. I truly believe that. At least I certainly try to live by it when I can. I mean, I guess you could do that all the time. I don't know. Not really thinking about the circumstances where that's the case, but figuratively and literally, I really do like that saying, and I'm certainly a proponent of surrounding yourself where you feel that imposter syndrome, and for once maybe it's actually quite founded, because I also do have imposter syndrome where it's not necessarily founded all the time. And although I can recognize that and have that rational thought, I then like irrationally spiral and just kind of have very off days where I feel very out of place and I feel very inadequate, unfortunately. Again, imposter syndrome is not an original thought or original experience, but where did this all even start? Holy tangent. Oh, about creating things in vacuums. Yeah. So I definitely encourage you to get out there, to get used to ego crushes also. I don't think there's certainly good kinds of ego crushes, and again, just making sure you're surrounding yourself with those people who crush your ego out of love instead of out of spite or hate. But I definitely consider myself lucky to have people in my corner that I know deep down are giving me harsh feedback because it's tough love, not solely just hate and picking things apart to pick them apart. And that's also a lot easier said than done. Again, in writing specifically, find certain things, even just the phrasing of something. If someone thinks a phrasing is awkward, I don't know, sometimes I get attached, and that then also gets into the conversation. We're just doing the domino effect today. Wow. That also gets in conversation with knowing when to accept feedback. I also think that is a great skill to develop, and to also exercise your right to be the ultimate artist and have the ultimate say in things is basically what I mean by that. Because also, yeah, just like learning when to accept feedback and knowing a certain artistic choice is what you want to do, even when someone kind of vetoes that and gives you constructive feedback against that. There are certainly times when you can say no. Just because you aren't the quote unquote expert I'm talking about doesn't mean that someone's opinion is always better than yours. Because especially when you're in a creative realm, things are subjective. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of that thought. Subjectivity is awesome, in my opinion. The other thing, while I'm also kind of talking about writing and creativity and producing, is deadlines. I am currently in a creative writing class, and that has taught me a good bit so far. But one of the points that we were talking about is basically just developing a good relationship with deadlines. And I honestly need a deadline to survive. I know some people really do not like them. It's the bane of their existence. But truly, I do not submit things without a deadline. There's a piece that I have been working on off and on for months. Like, I just cannot bring myself to go back to it right now. I did one massive revision, again, after getting feedback from a trusted adult. I did one round of like really intense revision and other like minor revisions here and there. But for some reason, like, I just don't have a deadline at all. It's something that was like, I know submitting it also to the publication that I'm going for will really benefit my portfolio at the very least. But it's just so easy to push things down the to-do list and have them constantly be like the last thing on your list, that when you don't get to them, you don't push them to the top of your list for the next day. It's just consistently at the bottom of your to-do list. Again, maybe that's just me, but I don't think so. So with this thing, it has been so easy to just put it in the back with all of the writing I'm now doing for this creative writing class, and then other more matter-of-fact writing that I'm doing in like a communication law class I'm in right now. And there's just so many other tasks. And so when you don't have a deadline to eventually have that procrastination monster kick in, it's tough to push yourself, honestly. But then also it's weird because I don't procrastinate, at least in recent years, I haven't procrastinated nearly as much as I used to. But even the thought of a deadline in a month gets me pacing the work, you know what I mean? So anyway, it's in the best interest of writers in particular, but quite literally everybody who has a job, because you're going to be working on projects, especially in like the corporate life, to befriend deadlines. But then also it's interesting because I do work better on deadline when they're short. And last week I actually came into the studio and I had filmed 2 episodes in advance, so I really didn't need to film a podcast episode. But I was like, you know what, I'll get ahead of the game, and when it comes around to editing, then I can take my time. And it's just nice to not have to push out content last minute and feel like I don't have flexibility for other plans. But then I sat in the studio and I quite literally spoke gibberish on and off for 30 minutes before I called it quits. I kept pausing the track. I kept stuttering over my words. I actually didn't have a single coherent thought, except then I wasn't thinking out loud, stringing sentences together with some kind of end or purpose in mind. There, I really was just trying to speak basic English. I don't know what was going on. I wasn't having really a single mediocre thought in my head. And again, I don't necessarily think I'm intellectual ever, but if I am, it certainly was not then. That was like me bottoming out. And I think part of the reason was I didn't have a deadline to push thoughts into my head and to like decloud my brain. You know what I mean? There was just no external pressure to be like, okay, yeah, you need an episode on Sunday and you got nothing, girl. So speak. Another thing I wrote in my notes app that I wanted to touch on was romanticizing places that I've never been solely because I've never been. And I think this is something I struggle with a lot. Well, I mean, it's not a struggle to do it, actually, but it's more so a struggle related to something else, and this is like a coping mechanism. I think it is so easy for me to leave a place even when I'm still physically there and travel somewhere else mentally and just tell myself that the versions of it that I see on YouTube, on TikTok, that I even hear from like face-to-face interactions where I have people telling me stories about those places that they've been. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times you're not hearing bad stories of someone who is like working or studying abroad. They're telling you all of those great times. And because it's filtered, again, especially with social media, and you often have a highlight reel more than not, just something in my mind forgets that life and problems and drama and work, whatever it is gonna follow you anywhere. Something in me, when I see a edit of, I don't know, someone like on the Amalfi Coast, something in me just totally forgets that that person has a complex life, and maybe they're on vacation now, maybe that, like, whatever. Obviously, editing, the whole purpose is to cut out the non-interesting parts. And yet, when I'm struggling, or I don't know, just like having a bad day, even if it's like a rainy day and it's been raining for a while, like this is the 6th day in a row it's rain or something, and I'm just trying to get through, my first instinct is to just like put myself somewhere else, except then that ends up romanticizing a place in a way that's just totally unfair to myself and logic. And I'm also trying to fight this, not only because I need to appreciate the present and where I am more, but also because it then kind of creates an unrealistic expectation for that place when if I go there, you know what I mean? So I find myself doing this a lot, not only in just like random places, but specifically in places I know that I'm going to be in the future. And it's a lot easier to get through life, I think, when you have something to look forward to in the future. To make this more concrete and hopefully make you understand, I'm studying abroad in London in the fall. And this has been a long time coming, and I'm so incredibly excited. And when, for example, like in the winter here, I know I've talked about like Oregon winters being pretty tough just with the weather and stuff, and seasonal affective disorder, and like it certainly becomes a harder time for me, and I know for a lot of other people. And so when I had gotten to this program in London, and keep in mind, this is extra funny because it rains in London. Like, London is not the sunniest place on earth. And yet, like, the dry falls I've been seeing there, or like the spring, even though I'm not even going to be there in the springtime, really helps me like romanticize that city that I have never been to ever. I have just heard of other people's experience that have studied abroad there. I'm seeing these videos, whatever. And so it's so easy to look forward to that like European lifestyle, European university in a way, and just all the new experiences I'm going to have, and traveling and possibilities, etc., etc. And a lot of people talk about study abroad being one of the best experiences of their life. So there's already a high expectation from other people and their experiences. And then on top of that, just by trying to escape the present and get to the next day, like there's certainly nothing wrong with occasionally, just if you need to get by and you're just in a low place, do this. Honestly, it helps me get through. But then there's a little too much of it for myself, I know, where I'm passing the limit of acceptable to help you get by, and then it's just straight on, okay, you're not being grateful, or you're wishing your life away, or not wishing your life away. That's a bit aggressive. I should say you are waiting your life away, because then I know when I get to London, I'm going to have built this image up in my mind, such like a vivid, what other descriptor should I say? Just like vivid idealist place and experience in my mind. And then I'm going to be putting so much pressure on myself to fulfill this image that I have then created, which then defeats the whole purpose of this escape that I've essentially made, or that I'm not like hoping to find necessarily, but just a different thing, a good thing that I'm hoping to find and experience. So like it's already unfair to me, and I'm the one doing it. And yet it's so natural to me to just do like resort to escapism. I've been trying when I go really just far off in planning things in advance. And this was even for college, for example. It's not just with vacations or really out there. I think it's fair to say for study abroad, out there experiences. Like, not everyone gets to experience that. And just when I was living in Pennsylvania and I picked college all the way across the country, and I hadn't had any experiences with Oregon ever. And I was in it for a day when I was touring colleges, and I wasn't exposed to it, and I wasn't like working there, whatever. Like, it was just so easy to idealize that place and make it seem like an escape from what I don't even know anymore. But like when high school was hard or whatever, or when it was like the quarter system and all my friends were at their schools already and I was just waiting to go, it was so easy to like look down on the place where I was at and to not practice gratitude when I'm talking about a place I've never even been, and I'm having these thoughts that aren't even founded. And because I just watched an algorithm, or I'm solely just thinking of what could be. I don't know. I'm just basically, what I'm trying to say is that this is a repeated offense of mine, a repeated offense that I am actively trying to work back from and to not do in the future, and to do a better job, not only calling myself out, or calling myself out essentially, and realizing what I'm doing, but then to go a step further and to stop doing it. Like, calling it out is one thing, but then to actually practice gratitude and be present and still be excited for the future. Like, I'm not saying I can't be excited, but there's certainly a line, and I just can't cross it until it's time, until it's in the fall when it's time to go to London, and then I will have like low expectations and high hopes, and that will, I feel like, just maximize my experience, and I won't be let down in any capacity at all, because I will not have built up this unrealistic image in my mind where I'm not doing work and I'm constantly going, because I know, again, like, it's rainy there and I'm still doing school there. Like, it's called study abroad for a reason. So yes, I'm gonna take a sip of water real quick. Okay, side note, something not really side note, that I've been thinking about a lot is Love on Tour. If you're not familiar, that is Harry Styles' like 2-part tour. He did Love on Tour when he was touring Fine Line, and then he came back again and was doing like his residencies for a lot of that as well. And that was for Harry's house, but that was also still called Love on Tour. I have been seeing, or honestly, I just came across Little Freak again, and that's probably one of my favorite songs by his, I would say, certainly right now. And I was just going through a phase of it, and then on my TikTok, I honestly need to get off TikTok. The amount of times I reference it is just telling me what I need to know. I was doing great for a really long time, not going on TikTok, not being a fucking screenager, and I was actually absorbing content that was mindful, and I went through a Substack phase. Like, I just love Substack instead of instead of going on TikTok while I was eating breakfast alone when I was on spring break. I would listen to a Substack article. Substack has the like AI generated audio, so you can just kind of play that, so I could multitask. It was great. I would then unload the dishwasher directly after breakfast, and I was getting into a schedule, and I would have read at least like 3 Substack articles a day, and that was very thought-provoking and felt very just regenerative in a way, and certainly not degenerative and taking energy from me when I was just kind of mindlessly scrolling and having instant gratification, whilst also ruining my attention span just more with every scroll. So I went through a Substack phase. I was binge reading at the time because I had more time. Just so many examples of great mindful content. And now, if I just have like 10 minutes in between class or something, or I need to reward myself after, like, during a study break, a lot of times I'm turning to TikTok, and I'm kind of hating myself for it, but Anyway, moving on and not being completely self-loathing / deprecating, putting that to the side for a second. On TikTok, I have been seeing Love on Tour videos resurfacing, and I don't even have the words for how emotional just that tour makes me feel. Nonetheless, I'm going to try, naturally, as this is a podcast. But I just see those videos and I associate that tour with so much love. And if you haven't seen Love on Tour Forever, which was an edit of sorts made after to kind of commemorate that tour and the friendship and the love and creation that it stood for, definitely go watch on Love on Tour Forever on YouTube. It like, you can't not feel something after watching that. I remember I saw him in Philadelphia with my friend Mia, and that was such a special time. And I saw him at Madison Square Garden. My mom's sister and my sister's friend, shout out Helen, we trained up and we got out at Madison Square Garden. And I actually sobbed for a good bit of that concert. I was not expecting to cry that night. If you know me, I don't cry in public. I don't cry that often, period. But I do welcome crying at concerts just unashamedly. And yet I wasn't expecting to cry at this one. And I remember the opening line, or the opening guitar of Matilda played, and I just broke down out of nowhere. And then how rude, he went right into Little Freak, and I absolutely lost it. And I was just having thoughts I was not expecting to have, and I was just really going through it. But it was still such a great experience. Like, the endorphins I experienced after crying was insane. And I just have so much love and respect for Harry Styles and the open community he creates. And so just, it's so special when you go to a concert and everyone is dressed to the nines in 80 different ways and you're all there for the same reason. Like, just the community I feel from everyone intentionally going there and seeking out the same thing and having just that commonality between them. And there's nothing like the community in the girls' bathroom at a Harry Styles concert, and even the merch lines. Like, it's just such an out-of-body experience. That's essentially just what this all is an out-of-body experience. And the fact that with just a few guitar chords, I'm just transported back there. I don't know where this resurfacing has come from, considering, like, he started working on the album that's going to come out next. He started working on that, I don't know, maybe a month ago as of right now. There was, like, he posted on his story and a lot of people were, like, putting it together. His bandmates had posted separately and they were all going back to London, whatever. So that's a current rumor going around. So I don't know why Love on Tour didn't resurface then, but it's resurfacing now, and I'm just obsessed with it. It makes me so happy. I just can't, again, even describe. So, I mean, I really hope everyone has that same experience in some kind of artist, in some kind of mindful content, and I feel very similarly about Taylor Swift and her Eras tour and the friendship bracelets. And I also just don't know how you can't respect people like that. Like, you don't have to like them, you don't have to like their music, but I certainly don't understand when people disrespect them actively. I think it's a shame, and I think it's ignorant, honestly, when people ignore, like, they just simply refuse to acknowledge the community these people have created. And in my opinion, they have legacies. I don't think that's even an opinion, though. I really think that's a fact, the legacy that, like, Taylor Swift and maybe even Harry Styles will have. But as of right now, I'm certainly nostalgic. I know that's a bit of a buzzword on this podcast after my nostalgia episode, but yeah, I'm definitely feeling the nostalgia every single time. And I've been walking to class listening to Harry's House on repeat. I love that album so much. And another thing about new music and feeling nostalgic and just excited and out-of-body experiences, Lorde, hello, just confirmed she has a new single coming out. I think it's called What Was That? And there was a teaser of it again on TikTok, sue me. And it was just so, like, she's talking about like being 17. I mean, we're all perpetually stuck in our 17-year-old selves, it seems like. I know sometimes I definitely feel like I am, or at least I will never stop talking about the effing experiences that I had when I was 17. But it just feels very melodrama like, which, if you're not familiar, melodrama is not her debut album, but one of her more like primitive, or that's not the word I want to use, just one of her former albums. It was before like Solar Power and such, and it feels very melodrama-esque, and I'm so obsessed. We are going to have a Lord's Summer, and I could talk about it forever, but I won't. But so that has really been on my mind, and every single time I'm reminded that she's coming out with a new single, I just absolutely freak. Okay, the last thing I want to touch on is how having a digital footprint and just social media in general makes people think that they know you. And I was actually kind of having a crisis debating if they actually do, to an extent. And I want to say no, but having this podcast, I'm sharing a lot of thoughts, and they don't even necessarily have to be deep to give you insight into who I am as a person. And to that, I kind of just hope, and I think myself, that the things that are so central to who I am and the things that people who truly know me can recognize, they cannot be verbalized. It's more about just like energy and actions, in a sense, not actions in a way of physically being here in the studio and recording this podcast and investing my time in editing, but you just can't necessarily say that on a podcast, you know what I mean? Even if we were to get into like a deep discussion about my morals or something, part of me just thinks that unless you have met me in person, like, you can't know me. But I know this conversation has been had around celebrities a lot, and how that can actually get quite freaky quite quick when people have like stalkers and people are just like obsessed with celebrities, because there's so much content out there that you feel like you know them. It's honestly really hard not to, when it's posts almost every day, or behind the scenes of the making of an album, which is like a very intimate project, or just like the lyrics they write, or any journal entries they post. Just, there's so many things that have you feeling like you're intimately interacting with someone, and yet it's all through a screen. And I think that's a bit of, I need to stop cursing on this podcast, so I'm trying to think of a different phrase than what I was about to say. I just think that gets really confusing, I should say, because you're ingesting all this content from one person, and even if that's filtered in some way, or even if it's supporting a brand, an image of some sort, it just, the sole quantity of it makes you think like you've been exposed to them more. And I just think intimacy is in a lot of forms, but the most intimate of intimacies is like physical. It's even, and not even in a romantic way, but just being in the presence of someone, having a conversation with someone one-on-one, again, feeling their energy, a lot of intangible things that you pick up just by being with someone. You don't get that when you are seeing all this content, consistent content from celebrities, whoever it may be, really. And yet, I feel like I could just talk in a circle about this. I somehow am naive enough to think I'm a mysterious person. I don't think it's that like reckoning with the idea that I'm not mysterious, though. That's what's killing me. It's just the fact that it's a one-way sense of communication. You know what I mean? Because, again, if we're using the word intimate here, like, just the true knowing of someone, like, that feels intimate, it's personal, it's one-on-one, it's deep. You can't have that if it's one-way communication. So the phenomenon that you know someone or feel like you know someone so well and they yet know nothing about you, and there's a good chance that they don't even know that you think you know them because they don't know that you're consuming all the media that you do. It's a lot to take in for sure, and I've just been thinking about that. And again, I don't even have to be on here talking about like my deepest, darkest secrets, about my morals, to feel that I have opened up myself to, I have just opened up myself, period. Like, I had an experience where someone quite literally had the upper hand of like information, and they voiced that they had come with an unfair advantage, quote unquote, when I was getting to know them, and they felt that they had already known so much about me. And the fact that they even voiced this was a little bit jarring, and yet it totally wasn't their fault necessarily, because again, I'm actively creating this content, and yet it just felt very stripping to know that this person had consumed hours of content as if they were sitting down one-on-one with me. It's very different when you're hearing someone's voice. I feel like with singing, podcasting, or people being in movies, when you're seeing or hearing people act, it's not as flat as an Instagram post per se. It feels more dynamic. It feels like you're more there with them. At least that's what it comes off as to me. So knowing this person had sat down with at least 10 hours of a version of me, and I had known nothing about them, I had almost wished that they didn't verbalize that to me. But because then the knowing of it again is one thing. I'm not saying that you don't want to do your due diligence before hanging out with someone, before knowing someone. Again, it's just so natural to then look them up, to give yourself like a teaser trailer essentially, to know what you're getting into, kind of feel out their vibe, or to at least think you're knowing what you're getting into. But I've kind of been reckoning with then the like development of reactions to creating this podcast. And I don't know if I was anticipating that, but yet here we are. So it's fine if I'm not the most mysterious of people, and yet I feel like there's so much that the internet could never possibly know. There's so much that I wouldn't put out there. A lot of that being the core of who I genuinely think I am, but people knowing a lot of like stories about me and getting a well-rounded picture of me. I'm not saying again that that is an invalid response. It totally is valid, because I mean, I've had it myself with celebrities. And yet I'm not a celebrity in any means. That's quite a funny joke. And so putting myself in those shoes of like 1/1,000,000th, billionth the extent has been a little weird. Here I talk a lot uninterrupted, but the grand majority of people, I feel, don't experience the same version of me that I feel myself to be when I'm most comfortable and when I'm most myself and vocal and excited and energized, etc., etc. That was kind of the last thought I wanted to express for today, but then that also does kind of get me thinking on how I'm like 80 versions of myself to both myself and to other people, and the idea of being perceived and not knowing how people perceive me, but kind of thinking I know how people perceive me. I honestly would be really interested to see if my perceptions lined up with theirs. So there's just a lot of versions of me, and good, bad, ugly, in between, whatever it is. It's just interesting to think about. But I think that is going to be a topic for another day. So thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. It has been fun to think out loud with you and to maybe develop some ideas more than others and not have it be super deep, dark, perfect, whatever. And with that, I'll leave you with follow at HBU Hear Me Out on Instagram for more. And this time around, I'm actually going to add that I have started posting video episodes on YouTube. So if that's something you're interested in, at Sadie Michael Morden, Michael for the Michael, that is going to be on YouTube, and you can look into that. Otherwise, if you want to stick with Spotify, that's great too. I really appreciate any way that you guys interact with Hear Me Out. It really means a lot to me. So stay safe, and I'll see you guys next Sunday.